Mr. Speaker, recent events and today's court ruling bring to the surface again the anxiety of our Epping community. My thoughts, Mr. Speaker, remain with the victims, including the 14-year-old Epping schoolgirl. Appallingly, they and their families heard about this wrongful prisoner release from media instead of the government. It is frankly astonishing the government are only using their levers of power in the courts to overturn this case brought by the council, but are not using their powers to address the issues in the front line. The illegal immigration crisis, mistaken release of convicted prisoners, and serious management and safeguarding issues associated with the Bell Hotel, which needs to close urgently. When will the government get a grip, realise that they are not political commentators, but they are players on the pitch, and use their powers to tackle these issues once and for all?
Well, I recognise the sensitivity of this issue in his constituency, and I do recognise that many will have looked closely at that decision in the courts today. He knows that under the last government, £9 million a day being spent on housing people in hotels. He knows that the government is committed to a new programme, and we're looking, for example, at military bases to see where we can house. But he also knows that we have increased the amount of foreign nationals leaving this country and returning to the countries that they are from.
Paul Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to put on record my thanks to all the prison officer staff at Buckley Hall Prison in Rochdale who've held the line in the face of impossible cuts and challenges over the last 14 years under the last government. It's hard to imagine the sheer distress that's caused to victims and their families whenever there's a releasing error of any prisoner, as happened, as has been said, 800 times under the last government, without a single apology, without a single independent inquiry, without a single photo, without a single name that are being demanded by the shadow leader up on the other side. Does he agree that victims and their families should be put at the heart of our reforms when we're trying to make sure this never happens again?
So stay.
He's absolutely right, and it's one of the reasons why I asked Dame Lynn Owens, as she looks at this issue, to meet with the victims, particularly of Kabatu's crime, and keep victims in mind. We do have to ensure, notwithstanding the errors that have been made, public confidence in the system. And it is important, of course, to assert once again from this dispatch box that 57,000 people are released from prisons every year. And the vast majority of those lead to no error at all.
Chris Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his statement today and the manner in which he has delivered it. The wrongful release of prisoners is of huge concern to my constituents in Harlow, and can I echo the comments made by colleagues across the House that ultimately the people that really suffer from this are the victims of those terrible crimes. Having previously worked for a homeless charity in Harlow, I saw a number of prisoners who were released on a Friday. They'd come to us on a Friday afternoon about 5 o'clock with nowhere to go. Does the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that actually when we release people from prison, we should make sure they have somewhere to go? And actually, if they have to declare where they're going to go after they're released, we may avoid some of these mistakes.
And he's right that the Friday release issue, was often about public services not being available over the course of Friday evening into Saturday, and the homelessness problem that pertains to. And it's why I think it is important that we re-look at what is happening in the system and the system that we inherited.
Alison Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 10th of October, Ola Abimbola, a violent Nigerian criminal, walked out of Ford Open Prison in my Bognor Regis and Littlehampton constituency. He hasn't been seen since. He's meant to be serving 21 years for GBH, kidnap and possession of an offensive weapon. So I asked the Secretary of State, how many other prisoners are at large from Ford Open Prison, and what offences were they imprisoned for?
So state.
Well, the Honourable Lady will know that absconding is a serious criminal offence, that any defendant who commits this crime could face longer behind bars. It's a different issue, of course, to releases in error, because there have always existed Category D prisons, and absconds, those prisoners are assessed, but I want to assure her that actually when we look at the trend of those who are absconding, it is on a downward trend, with 57 in the year to March 2025.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Justice Secretary aware of any crimes committed by wrongly released prisoners whilst at large?
Well, as I've just said, under the last government, William Fernandez went on to commit an horrific crime. They never came to the dispatch box. By definition, if we got to a situation, and we did in 2024, where 17 releases in error were happening, of course it's possible that people can go on to commit crimes. That's why I'm hugely grateful, I know it's police resource, for the efforts of our police to rearrest these individuals, and some of them, as we saw last week, hand themselves back in when they realise that it has been committed in error. Our job is to minimise risk, but in a paper-based system, we can never eradicate risk in time.
Timothy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Justice Secretary said one of the prisoners accidentally released and still at large is a foreign national offender, and I know after PMQs last week he will be very well briefed this week. So can he say whether the prisoner was inside for aggravated burglary, drug offences or failing to surrender to the police? And can he also say how this foreign national offender entered the country and whether he was an asylum seeker?
So stay.
Well, I've made available as much detail as I can, given that normally this information is released in July. Case 2 was in prison for a Class B drug offence, and my understanding is, to the best of my knowledge, that that was the F&O prisoner, and I'm telling the honourable gentleman that, but I will have it double-checked because this information was made available to me very recently, and I will write to him if I make an error.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, I have 2 prisons, one at Wetherby, one at Wealdstone. I have 2 on the outside, one at Askham Grange, one at Full Sutton. And they've heard the Secretary of State say that he has put in place some of the strongest measures ever there. The only question that my constituents want to answer to, Mr. Speaker, is when will they be able to say that they don't fear people being dangerous criminals being released onto the streets and terrorising their communities?
So stay.
Well, I recognise the anxiety that this will have caused, and in a way this has been a revelation to the public that people are released in error from our system. And I'd want to emphasise that the vast majority of people are released in the correct manner, 57,000 released every year, but under successive governments for all of my lifetime, there have been releases in error. We want to bring that down to historic levels because it has been going up since 2021, but in a paper-based system, implemented often by junior staff. I cannot stand here and say we will eradicate it, but we will reduce it over the course of this Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week in Prime Minister's Questions, the Deputy Prime Minister said, quote, "Get a grip, man. I know I'm the Justice Secretary." Well, I'm pleased he knows he's the Justice Secretary, and with it comes leadership. So can he guarantee for the public going forward he has a grip on the issue of released prisoners by mistake?
So said.
Well, that's why I chaired a new performance board. That's why I've asked Dame Lynn Owens to look at this issue intensively. That's why I found 10 million for a digital rapid response unit. That's why, because there's this gap sometimes between our courts and our prisons, as has been referred to, I've put in place a new urgent query process. That's why we're taking through this House the sentencing bill, which will simplify release. All of those measures will begin to bear down on this issue, and I'm sure Dame Lynn Owens will come forward with more measures, and we will take them.
Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the summer recess, I had the pleasure to visit the probation centre